Welcome to Law and the Machine, where artificial intelligence meets the legal system, liability, regulation, intellectual property, and the government's uncomfortable role as both rulemaker and AI adopter. The law wasn't written for this. A federal judge is set to invalidate the Pentagon's decision to label Anthropic, a prominent AI developer, as a supply chain risk. This isn't just a bureaucratic squabble over a label. It strikes at the heart of how the government interacts with AI companies that prioritize ethical development.
That's right. The ruling from the Court of Federal Claims isn't final yet, but the judge's preliminary statements indicate strong skepticism toward the Pentagon's justification. What's truly remarkable is that this supply chain risk designation, usually reserved for vendors with actual security vulnerabilities or foreign influence, was applied to a company known for its focus on AI safety.
And the backstory here is particularly revealing. The designation reportedly came after Anthropic, a leader in AI safety research, pushed back against certain military applications of its technology and advocated for ethical guardrails in its contracts. It suggests a potential linkage between a company's ethical stance and its perceived risk.
Exactly. It raises the immediate question of whether the designation was a genuine security concern or a punitive measure. The judge noted that the government's definition of supply chain risk seemed to expand considerably when applied to Anthropic, moving beyond traditional security parameters to encompass, implicitly, a company's ethical reservations.
Unpacking this supply chain risk label. For listeners, what does that designation typically entail in government contracting, and why is it such a potent weapon for an agency like the Pentagon?
Historically, a supply chain risk designation is a severe warning flag. It's meant to identify vendors whose products or services could be compromised, either intentionally or unintentionally, by foreign adversaries or other malicious actors. Think of it as a cybersecurity red alert for the entire procurement process. It can lead to a company being barred from contracts, having existing contracts terminated, or even being blacklisted from federal work for an extended period. For a company like Anthropic, which relies heavily on cloud infrastructure and collaborates with various entities, such a label could be catastrophic, effectively cutting them off from a significant segment of the market and severely damaging their reputation.
And the Pentagon's application of this label to Anthropic seems to deviate significantly from that traditional understanding. What precisely did Anthropic do to trigger this beyond their general reputation for AI safety?
The reporting indicates that Anthropic, which developed its constitutional AI approach to align models with human values, specifically expressed reservations about the military's use of its large language models. They sought to implement ethical guidelines and restrictions on how their technology could be deployed in defense contexts. These weren't vague philosophical statements. These were concrete requests for contractual clauses that would, for instance, prohibit certain autonomous weapon applications or mandate human oversight. It appears to be these very efforts to embed ethical considerations into their contractual relationships that led to the Pentagon's unusual designation.
That's a critical point. It wasn't just a general ethical stance, but specific attempts to shape the terms of engagement. It sounds like the Pentagon interpreted these ethical guardrails not as responsible innovation, but a form of instability or unpredictability in their supply chain.
Precisely. From the Pentagon's perspective, a supplier that insists on specific ethical constraints or limits on use might be seen as less reliable or less compliant with the immediate operational needs. It introduces a variable they prefer not to have in a critical technology acquisition. This case highlights a clash between two fundamentally different approaches: the Pentagon's desire for unimpeded technological capability versus Anthropic's commitment to responsible development.
Delving into Anthropic's constitutional AI for a moment. For many, AI ethics still feels abstract. What does that approach mean in practice, and how does it inform their resistance to certain military applications?
Constitutional AI is Anthropic's method for making AI models safer and more aligned with human values by training them to follow a set of principles, almost like a constitution. Instead of direct human feedback for every single output, the AI itself learns to critique and revise its responses based on a predefined set of rules or principles. These principles might include tenets like do no harm, promote fairness, or avoid deception. In the context of military applications, this means Anthropic is trying to build systems that inherently resist generating or assisting in actions that violate these core principles. So, if a military application involves, say, autonomous targeting without sufficient human review, a constitutional AI model might be designed to flag that or even refuse to generate content that would facilitate it.
So, it's an architectural choice, not just a policy statement. They're trying to hardwire ethics into the very fabric of the AI. And it's that attempted baked-in safety that seemingly put them at odds with a major government customer.
Exactly. And this isn't about Luddism or an unwillingness to engage. Anthropic, like many leading AI companies, understands the potential of their technology across many sectors, including defense. The tension arises when the defense sector wants the raw capability without the ethical constraints that the developers believe are crucial for safe deployment, especially given the dual-use nature of many AI systems. The designation essentially implies that a company's commitment to ethical AI development and its willingness to enforce those ethics somehow makes its technology unreliable or introduces unacceptable risk.
And the legal challenge to this designation is quite significant. The judge's inclination to side with Anthropic suggests that the Pentagon's application of supply chain risk might have overstepped its bounds. What are the legal ramifications if this ruling holds?
The judge noted that the government's arguments for the designation seemed ill-defined and lacked the specific, tangible security threats typically associated with a supply chain risk. If the ruling is finalized, it would effectively limit the government's ability to use such a broad and damaging label for reasons that aren't directly related to traditional supply chain security. It could set an important precedent, signaling to other contractors that agencies can't simply weaponize these designations to pressure companies into compliance or silence ethical objections. It forces agencies to articulate concrete security concerns rather than using a catch-all phrase to sideline companies with whom they have policy disagreements.
It's almost like the Pentagon was trying to use a hammer designed for national security threats to crack a nut that was actually about policy and ethical disagreements.
That's a fitting analogy. The supply chain risk framework is intended for protecting against espionage, sabotage, or foreign subversion of technology. Applying it to a company's internal ethical policies or its contractual demands for responsible use stretches that definition beyond recognition. This legal pushback ensures that these powerful government tools aren't repurposed for purposes they weren't designed for, especially when those purposes might infringe on a company's autonomy or ethical commitments.
This case seems to encapsulate a broader structural tension in the AI landscape. The government as both a massive customer and a nascent regulator. When the customer role clashes with the ethical aspirations of the providers, who wins?
This is where the lines blur significantly. The Pentagon, and indeed other government agencies, are among the largest potential purchasers of advanced AI systems. This gives them immense leverage. When they act as a customer, they can impose terms, demand certain capabilities, and, as we see here, even apply labels that have profound commercial consequences. But they are also part of the broader government apparatus tasked with setting norms, developing regulations, and theoretically promoting responsible AI development. When a company's ethical stance is penalized by the procurement arm of the government, it undermines the very idea of fostering a responsible AI ecosystem.
So if a company is trying to adhere to ethical principles and then faces a supply chain risk label for doing so, what kind of chilling effect does that have on other AI developers?
The chilling effect could be substantial. Other AI companies, especially smaller ones or those heavily reliant on government contracts, might think twice before raising ethical objections or insisting on guardrails. The financial and reputational cost of fighting a supply chain risk designation, even if ultimately successful, is enormous. It could lead to a situation where companies prioritize securing contracts by offering no-strings-attached AI rather than investing in and advocating for the ethical development and deployment of their technology. This creates a perverse incentive, pushing developers away from safety and responsibility, which ultimately endangers everyone.
And this is particularly concerning given the dual-use nature of AI. The very systems that can enhance national security or provide vital civilian services can also be misused for surveillance, autonomous targeting, or disinformation.
Absolutely. The dual-use problem means that a general-purpose AI model developed for, say, logistical optimization could easily be repurposed for military targeting or intelligence gathering. Companies like Anthropic are trying to manage that dual-use risk upfront. When the government pushes back against those efforts using punitive labels, it signals a preference for unconstrained access to technology over shared responsibility for its societal impact. This approach makes it much harder to build trust and collaboration between the private sector and government on critical issues like AI safety and national security.
It points to a deep-seated conflict where the national security imperative, as defined by procurement bodies, can directly contradict the stated goals of ethical AI development and even broader regulatory aspirations.
It does, and it raises tough questions about the mechanisms through which government interacts with the cutting edge of technology. Does this inadvertently create a system where the government's role as a customer allows it to bypass ethical considerations that it might otherwise champion as a regulator? This incident clearly illustrates a situation where a government agency appears to have leveraged its immense purchasing power to pressure a company that was advocating for a more ethical approach to AI.
Synthesizing this, the situation involves a major AI developer trying to embed ethics, facing a harsh and arguably misplaced label from the Pentagon, and now a federal judge seems poised to invalidate that label. What are the key takeaways for anyone following the evolving intersection of AI, government, and ethics?
First, the case highlights the immense power of government procurement offices. Labels like supply chain risk are not just administrative. They are potent tools that can make or break companies and influence the entire trajectory of technological development.
Second, it underscores the ongoing tension between national security imperatives and the push for ethical AI. Companies striving for responsible innovation might find themselves at odds with government agencies prioritizing immediate access and capability.
Third, the judicial intervention here is crucial. It acts as a necessary check on potential overreach, ensuring that government agencies are held accountable for the legitimate application of their powers, even in the sensitive domain of national security.
And finally, this incident provides a stark example of how the lines blur when the government acts as both a primary customer for advanced AI and a potential future regulator. The incentives created by large contracts can easily overshadow broader ethical considerations.
Indeed, the fundamental question that remains is this. If ethical guardrails are deemed a risk by government purchasers, what does that mean for the future of AI safety and the public trust in how these powerful technologies are developed and deployed?
That's all for Law and the Machine. Join us next time as we continue exploring where AI and the law collide. If you found this useful, subscribe. We appreciate it.
The law will catch up, eventually.